to the Here I Am talk show with host Jamie Willis, where we discuss today's truths, people's stories, testimonies, healings, miracles, and so much more. Let's get started, honey. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Here I Am show. We have such an exciting show today. I've been knowing Jenny for, I think it's been about 2 or 3 years that we met at a conference. We made it a PPN rally, and we were connected right away. And I couldn't wait to have her on my show and to be able to tell the truth of what happened on January 6th, but how God turned this around and what an amazing ministry Jenny has. And I want to be full support of this ministry, and I can't wait to see it blossom and watching miracles and watching these J6ers come back home and to be able to have a place of rest and healing, because what they went through in the past couple years has been nothing but horrific. And I just thank God that he kept a lot of people safe. He kept Jenny safe, but he also gave us this boldness like we never had before, and what it really means to be free in the United States, and knowing our rights have been taken away for absolutely decades. And I'm looking forward to the inauguration of what is going to be happening. There are a lot of good things are going to be happening from this, but there doesn't mean that other things are not going to come behind it. Whenever there's light, there's always darkness in the back, just waiting to devour. So I'm anxious to get Jenny McCombs on here right now, and I'm just anxious for you to hear her story and her mission. Hey, Jenny.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. Did it sound okay in the beginning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Because sometimes my mic will be funky. I am just so glad to see you, Jenny. And as I said, we had a bond like the first time that we met, and we had a lot of the same stories of what we saw. And also through this, we were able to, we just want to be able to bring the light into this. So can you tell us briefly what happened on January 6th?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me on your show, Jamie.
You're welcome.
So I like to say that one of my spiritual gifts is protesting. I have been protesting the federal government in some capacity since I was 5 years old. The very first protest that I went to, obviously my parents took me to, which was outside of the Planned Parenthood clinic in Lubbock, Texas. And that Planned Parenthood clinic is no longer there. Now, I don't think that's because I was 5 years old holding a sign or anything, but I wonder if that's what gave me a taste for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been involved in politics. I believe everybody should be involved in politics because it's involved in you, whether you like it or not. And especially, I believe that Christians should be involved in politics because we wouldn't have half of the problems that we have today in society if Christians were involved in politics.
Absolutely.
If we elected godly leaders and all of that. So I went to DC for January 6th to protest a stolen election and to redress the government for my grievances, which is in the Constitution. And you know, what I experienced that day, and what one of the things that you and I connected on when we met in person, was how beautiful and patriotic that day was. You know, being around anywhere from 1 to 3 million people. I think the official number they finally settled on was 1.7 million people that showed up that day. Being around that many people that love their country and that are willing to do something about it is an experience like no other.
Yeah.
And, you know, everywhere we went that day, people were praying, singing the national anthem, the old hymns. a Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, just over and over and over. It was such a beautiful patriotic day that unfortunately has been overshadowed by what mainstream media chose to do, and people like Nancy Pelosi that created the entire situation, and a whole lot of people have suffered from it. So I actually, just to kind of like summarize my story as a January 6th defendant, I went inside the Capitol through the West Terrace door. That door was opened by police officers, and they were motioning people inside, which is called entrapment. And as soon as I got inside, I saw a prayer circle. So I went over and I joined that. And everybody in that circle but me was in tactical gear. And I found out 2 years later that those were actually the Oath Keepers, which are a wonderful group of people that believe that if you've ever sworn the oath to uphold the Constitution and defend it against enemies, foreign and domestic, that oath always applies. That doesn't go away just because you're no longer in office or not in the military or in law enforcement or anything. The Oath Keepers believe that you always keep that oath. And then I was in the rotunda and in Statuary Hall and walking between the velvet ropes. And, you know, the things that I saw inside the Capitol that day were elderly people in wheelchairs and walkers that were carried up the steps of the Capitol to go inside, and families with small children that were pointing at the different pictures, artwork, and statues inside the Capitol and explaining the history of our country to their children. I personally never witnessed any violence or destruction of property from any protesters. I only saw violence from police officers that day against protesters. And I was inside for about 19 minutes, and I was in the hallway above where Ashley Babbitt was murdered by Capitol Police Officer Lieutenant Michael Byrd. And people were coming out with blood on their hands saying they killed a girl. And I thought, well, it's probably time for me to exit. You know, something's changing. And so I went out the east side of the Capitol, past police officers, through an open door, just like I'd come in. And I don't think any of us had any idea what January 6th would turn into, the extent of what January 6th would turn into that day. I was arrested 1 week later. I was number 68 to be arrested. And today is actually the 4-year anniversary of me getting arrested at my previous business. I used to own a flower shop in Midland, Texas, and the Midland Police Department sent 8 police officers in full tactical gear, carrying long arms, and 2 attack dogs to arrest little old me. And at the time, I was only charged with 2 low-level misdemeanors. I was ultimately indicted and charged with 4 misdemeanors and a felony, and was facing 20 years in prison. But at the time I was arrested, I was only charged with 2 misdemeanors. And the Midland Police Department took me to the FBI, who I have no respect for, and I invoked my rights. And then the FBI took me to the U.S. Marshals, who were very professional and wonderful, and thought that it was absurd that I was in federal holding for 2 misdemeanors. But nonetheless, they had to shackle me by my hands, my feet, and around my waist. And I got in front of a judge that day and was released on a personal recognizance bond. And then, to summarize my story, I wound up taking a plea deal for trespassing, which is a Class A misdemeanor. And I was ultimately sentenced in March of 22 to 2 months federal probation and a $5,000 fine. And the judge explained the fine because it should have only been $1,000. And the $5,000 fine was because my words hurt people, which I thought fell underneath the First Amendment. Anyway, I'm still mad about that one.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So on that, did you have to pay right away in order for you to get released?
No, so I was already released. I never spent a night in prison, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank God.
I can tell you that where the concept of what my ministry J6 Road Home today came from that time frame. Because when I was in that spot of, do I take a plea deal and say that I'm guilty of trespassing in the people's house, or do I take this all the way to court and fight it, knowing that it is in Washington, D.C., that it's all rigged against you, that's not a jury of your peers, all of those things. That's a really hard spot to be in. And I believe that I made a deal with God that if I got my consequences of January 6th over sooner, that I would use my voice to educate people on what happened that day and to tell the stories of those that can't, whether because they died that day, there were 4 people that died that day, or 12 people have committed suicide since January 6th that are January 6th defendants, or because it's just not safe for them to talk, because their cases are active. And so I've traveled all over Texas, Oklahoma, and Alabama, educating people about January 6th and doing everything that I can to raise awareness to support those that are incarcerated and also those that are on the outside.
Yeah. And how many people are incarcerated right now?
So today we have about 243. So there are 1,600 total January 6 defendants that have been prosecuted for this. About 243 are currently incarcerated, and that is a mixture of people that are serving out their sentence and also of people that have been held for 4 years pre-trial and have never had their day in court. Now, they know that if they get their day in court, they're going to be convicted on all charges because we've seen that in hundreds and hundreds of cases. But there are several of them who have never even had their day in court or been convicted of anything that have been incarcerated for 4 years now.
Wow. I know that there's a gentleman in Florida that I know that he was arrested at 25 years old. Do you know his? I want to say that his name is Brandon.
Was it Brandon Fellows?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I actually got to meet Brandon my last trip to DC, which was in October of last year.
Mm-hmm.
So Brandon is a wonderful young man. And he is in DC right now. So that is a whole nother problem that we've found, because there are a lot of the J6 defendants that for whatever reason were sentenced to probation. Now, Brandon also went to prison for a while, but were sentenced to probation in Washington, D.C., which is not where they live. And so but they haven't been able to get their probation transferred. And so they have to stay in Washington, D.C., literally in the belly of the beast. Yeah. And thankfully, there's plenty of J6 supporters up there and everything. And so I met Brandon in October of last year over at Freedom Corner. Are you aware of Freedom Corner?
I'm not.
Oh, my goodness. It's amazing. So Freedom Corner is right outside of the DC Gulag that has held all of our people, so many people in transition and everything since January 6th. And Mickey Witoff, which is the mother of Ashley Babbitt, she felt like she had a calling to go to DC and to start having these nightly prayer vigils outside of the DC Gulag. And so Mickey, who lost her daughter on January 6th, Ashley Babbitt, right? Mickey and Nicole Reffitt, whose husband is incarcerated, Guy Reffitt, they're from Texas. She's also been up there this whole time. They have, to me, it's superhuman what they've done, because they have had a nightly prayer vigil outside of the DC jail for at least 2 years straight. And I mean every single night. And the guys will call in from the prison and they'll put that on speakerphone. They honor all the people that have died. They read a list of all of the people that are incarcerated. They also go to the trials and to the sentencing to support the families, which is so desperately needed. And they've also gone to tons and tons of congressional hearings because they're right there in DC, so they can go to all of these different hearings. And what Mickey has chosen to do with her grief is truly a supernatural gift. And she has blessed so many other January 6ers by being willing to go up there and do that nightly prayer vigil.
Oh, I wish I lived closer.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because the last thing that I did when I was there on January 6th was when I was hearing all this commotion. I was hearing like boom, boom. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and he says, I want you to get up on those stairs and I want you to start praying. So I'm like, all right, Lord, I didn't even say grace at the dinner table at the time, and I'm like, you want me to pray for something I have no idea what's going on? And he goes, yeah. He goes, get up. And I'm like, okay. So then I'm like, I have a really loud voice. And and I got everybody together and I'm like, the Lord told me that we need to pray. We need to pray right now. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and then they're like, yes, yes, yes. And so everybody was holding hands. There was hundreds of people holding hands. And I started praying. I really can't tell you exactly what I said because, all I can say is that there was some type of evil that was going on there and chaos and it was, pretty much what I was saying, in my prayer. And then after that, they said amen. And there was a prayer march that started from me praying and it went all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue that day.
That's beautiful.
And that's where I see where God is working with you too, because, you got to see that prayer that was happening in the Capitol.
Oh, yes. And it was all over that day.
And it was. And people just don't understand. And they, they're like, they'll tell me, well, you should be in prison. It was an insurrection. And I'm like, you have no clue. I even have video that I've shown. I'm like, does this look like it's an invasion or does it look like that that I witnessed history?
Yes.
It was epic.
It was.
God was in that place because if he wasn't, it would have been a total disaster. Mm-hmm. Not that it wasn't, but it would have went in that thousands of other people would have been killed.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Without a doubt.
It could have been way worse than it was.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the things that I've experienced in the last 4 years is moving from that spot of regret. I didn't ever regret what it is that I did on January 6th. I don't regret going inside. I don't regret any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. What I regretted was how it affected my family, my loved ones, my employees at the time, different things like that, because there was all of this hate and vitriol coming from people across the country. There were 1,200 tips to the FBI about me. Like, that's absurd, and then the obnoxious show of force that the police showed up with tactical gear and attack dogs and everything in order to arrest me for misdemeanors. Like, all of that was ridiculous. But I think a part of the healing process of grief and trauma, I'm very grateful that about a year ago, I finally got to where I am grateful that I'm a January 6th defendant. And I'm grateful that I get to be part of this group because, mean, as you know, there were 1 to 3 million people, 1 to 3 million of us that were there that day,
Yeah.
but only 1,600 have been prosecuted. And I don't believe that God makes mistakes,
He doesn't.
and I think that, I don't know, I go back and forth with it. Like the saying of nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Sometimes I have hard time with that one. But the one that I do really like is nothing is wasted in God's economy.
No.
And I believe that God can use anything for his greater good if you're willing to let him do it.
Yeah.
And so I don't really talk about all of the grief and trauma or what the process was like, or that I almost went bankrupt, or who all has canceled me, that I can't work with international business platforms anymore, because they canceled me after January 6th. I don't really talk about that stuff anymore because it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter as far as we don't want this to ever happen to Americans again. But, right after I got off of federal probation, which has been about 2.5 years, I was sentenced in March of 22, and then I got off probation in May of 22. And I started to realize that there are a ton of January 6 organizations, many of whom I work with closely, that had some kind of organization or purpose or ministry in order to help the J6ers today, to help put money on their commissary so that they can buy a pillow or shoes or protein, none of which the Bureau of Prisons has to give you. Ways to get people to write them letters of support and encouragement and prayers while they're incarcerated. Different ways to help their family members to make sure that they don't lose their house, or that the transmission gets fixed, or that we can support their wife and kids while they're locked up. There were tons of organizations that did wonderful, wonderful things to help the J6ers in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I started realizing about 2.5 years ago that nobody was working on what do we do with them when they get out. And I started thinking and talking to my other J6, organizations and friends and everything. And I was like, how can I build something big enough to house and feed and employ them? And I could tell you, God figured it out. So I have wanted to live in Fredericksburg, Texas, which is where I am now, since I was 8 years old. And I've looked at the specific property that my husband and I now have for over 3 years. So all of that is after January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
I kept saying, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's magical. And I didn't have the right words back then, but what it is consecrated and holy.
Yes, it is.
And we were not qualified. I mean, we were not qualified by any extent of the imagination, any possible way. And long story short, God told the bank to give us a giant loan to buy this place. And we moved down here in September of 23. And that whole story is like 8 hours in and of itself.
Yeah.
And once we were here, I was like, okay, I know why. It's because we have plenty of room to grow and plenty of room to build and to house and to feed and to employ the J6ers. And so we started working on it. Once we had this property, it was just a concept before that. And then in December of 2024, so just the other day, I finally launched our website, which is j6roadhome.com. And so I want to explain a little bit about what the program is, and then tell you a whole bunch of miracles that have happened since we launched the website.
I'm excited to hear.
j6roadhome.com is, right now, it is the only reentry program for January 6 defendants in the country. And so it's a comprehensive healing program. I believe that God can restore all things. And I believe that people also have to be healed body, soul, and spirit. And so in leading up to this, I have had and still have a very strong sense of duty and responsibility to make sure that I get my stuff taken care of, my grief and trauma, my, spiritual issues, all of that kind of stuff taken care of, so that I'm in a position to where I can help somebody else go through that. And thankfully, all of my background in education is in counseling, which wasn't my mistake either. And so we have set up already. We have a national telehealth company with doctors, medical professionals, licensed counselors that are all donating their time and efforts to help the J6ers as they get out. We also have banking in place with Old Glory Bank, which has been wonderful. Just got off another call with them today. We have a CPA in Florida that is offered to do all of the J6ers taxes for free. You're still expected to file your taxes even if you're locked up.
Wow.
And that's ridiculous in my opinion, but I'm sure there's plenty of people that are behind on their taxes. And then what's really been amazing has been how the community has stepped up around us. And now we have a job network that goes from Houston to Midland, which is most of Texas this way, and all different types of jobs. We've got tons.
Midland is near Dallas, correct?
No, ma'am. Midland's West Texas, so it's kind of right between Dallas and El Paso.
Okay.
And Midland is where I lived for the last 15 years, and where I had my previous business and everything that happened with January 6th. And so Midland's the oil field. So we've got oil field jobs up there. We've got tons of construction, skilled trades, remodeling, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, hospitality industry. I'm in Fredericksburg, which is the most tourist town in all of Texas, even though it's a very small town. Only 12,000 people live here. But it's the most traveled to tourist town in all of Texas because of the wildflowers in the springtime and the wineries that are down here and Oktoberfest and all of the old German culture and music festivals and all of that. It's really amazing. Wanted to be here since I was 8.
Wow.
And so we've been working on this network for the last year and a half that we've lived down here. And then it finally came time to launch our website. And God's timing is always right. And most of the time, I think it should happen way faster.
Yeah, I know.
But that's because I can only see what I can see.
It's all coming, to a conclusion. It's gonna still keep on growing. But I know that you built your first tiny home this week. Is that correct?
That's what we're working on. So we're in the process of building 5 tiny homes. The contractors, I just talked to them before I jumped on this with you, and bless their hearts, we have these 2 amazing contractors, Edwin and Brandon, and both of them are from this area, and both of them are donating all of their time and efforts in order to build these tiny homes, along with bringing on other subcontractors that believe in our cause and building supply companies and getting things donated and all kinds of stuff. And I mean, these guys are coming to do this and working for free and turning down jobs where they could be making money.
Yeah.
Because they believe in this cause. And one of the reasons why is because both of them have been incarcerated before for many years.
Yeah.
And they appreciate that somebody, when they got out, was willing to give them a second chance. And so they feel very strongly about what it is that we're doing, and have just been the biggest blessing. I mean, it is crazy. And so they tell me that we're going to have the first tiny house done by January 20th.
Wow.
And of course, the more funding we have, the faster we can build things. But I'm very excited to have that first tiny house done. If anybody wants to keep up with our progress, they can follow me on Facebook. It's under Jenny McCombs. I have a public account. I've never had a private account on anything. And And I post regularly the updates on what it is that we're doing with the tiny homes and the different donors and just all the crazy God miracles that are happening. So I could tell you that for sure we have, for sure, we have 2 guys that are moving here next week. And I'll talk about the presidential pardons and all of that kind of stuff too.
Okay.
So one of them is James McGrew, who is a Marine veteran. He joined the Marines after 9/11, was deployed and was hit with an IED and got a traumatic brain injury, and of course also Purple Heart and all of that stuff. And James has been incarcerated for almost 4 years now for January 6th. Most of that was pretrial. And he's a handyman by trade. And I've been friends with his mom for most of the last 4 years. And so he's coming as soon as he gets out of prison. And we've got jobs lined up. I mean, all kinds of stuff. I can't wait for James to get here. And
what a reunion that would be. Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Yes, ma'am. And then the second guy that's coming is actually from Texas. His name is Donald Hazard. And I like to joke and say I don't think he's related to the Dukes of Hazzard, but I don't know. Donnie. And Don also tons of experience in building and trades and pest control and different things like that. And Don's real excited to come down here. He's currently in a halfway house in Baltimore, Maryland. And I hope that he will be here next week. But then every day, you know, I get emails and phone calls from parents of J6ers that are incarcerated. I talked to an 80-year-old man today, and he lives in New Hampshire, and his son is incarcerated in Wisconsin, and he can't get a hold of him. Right now, they're moving a lot of people in prison, and they call it diesel therapy. And it's just to keep you constantly disrupted. Because once you get to a new prison, then it takes a couple weeks before your commissary kicks in or you get email or phone privileges again. And so it's just to keep people disrupted constantly. It's really horrible. Yeah. And so there's a lot of Sixers that are moving around the country right now, and their families can't get a hold of them. And so he called and asked if we had any space for his son to come to. And I didn't know at the time it was an 80-year-old man. And then I looked his son up, who I'd heard of before, Chris Quaglin, and he's an electrician. And I looked him up and I saw this video of his dad talking the day that Chris got sentenced to 12 years in prison.
Wow.
And his dad standing outside the DC court. It just doesn't know what to do with himself, obviously.
Yeah.
And hoping that he gets to see his son alive outside of prison before he dies. And so when he called me, you know, I kind of explained what it is that we're doing. Like, it's not just somewhere free to stay. You know, we expect you to go to counseling. We've got that lined up. We expect you to go to church. I don't care if you go to the church I go to or if you go to a different church. And we've got plenty of jobs and all of that kind of stuff. You know, it's an entire process. And we want people to come and commit to at least 3 months at a time. And then we go from there. And if they want to buy land out here and build their own house, we'll help them with that. If they want to start a small business down here, we'll help them with that. You know, that we're going to have a lot of people that just come and just need a break and need time to start healing and being and learning how to exist as a grown man without asking for permission for everything, you know?
Right.
And so I told his dad, I said, well, I mean, I'm not going to turn him away. So just send him down here. You know, I said, we're going to have this first house done by January 20th. I know we already have 2 people coming. I said, but if he has to stay in the guest bedroom with, you know, in my husband and mine's house, then that's fine. Like, we will figure it out. You know, if you need somebody to go pick him up in Wisconsin and bring him to me, great. You know, if you want to take him back home with you to New Hampshire, so that you can see him and love on him and everything. And then in a couple weeks need to send him down to me. Let's do that. There's no one size fits all kind of thing.
Right, right.
So we get calls all the time of people that need somewhere to go or, want to have an option. And one of the things too that I think we're facing is I think we're going to have a lot of people in the beginning, a lot of people in transition, that are coming out of prison, but maybe their loved ones couldn't afford to go and drive 500 miles away or camp out in front of the prison, hoping that they get out on January 20th, different things like that. So I think we'll have a lot of people in transition for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the ones that have already committed to come here and be a part of this. But then I think we're going to wind up seeing a lot of people that go home and try to go back to their old life, get their old life back. And there is no getting your old life back.
Yeah, no.
And so maybe after a couple months of them realizing that they're fighting with their wife and kids and, they can't get a job and the PTSD is starting to come out, that I think we're going to wind up getting a lot of people that need help several months from now or possibly even years from now that need somewhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're here for all of that too.
Yeah. And there's power in prayer. There's power in the name of Jesus to heal. Absolutely. From all of this. And that's, I'm proof, and you're proof too.
Yes, ma'am.
That it does, that, all the trauma and everything that we've been through, not so much, even with January 6th, because I had to put a lot of trauma on you and your family. But there's also, back trauma.
Yes.
And in combination of it, that been through so much, but as I said, there's power in prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And he restores lives.
Yes. And God restores all things. And that's one of the things that I tell people that maybe aren't on my side politically. Mm-hmm. Is, I believe that everybody deserves a second chance. And absolutely. I don't think that anybody's life and future life should be dictated off of what they did one day.
Right.
That's ridiculous. And I think that applies to all people, right? We've all made mistakes, different capacities, and God restores all things.
He does.
And I'm super grateful that last summer, 3 people came down and did deliverance and healing on me and were able to break some of, the rest of the chains off of January 6th. And now I'm learning about the deliverance and healing ministry and all of that kind of stuff, because it's just not what I was raised with when I was raised Southern Baptist.
And I wasn't either, Jenny. Oh my gosh, I have goosebumps right now, because that's what the Lord taught me 2.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many
prayed over people that had breast cancer and no longer have breast cancer.
Amen.
But it's due to the power of the Holy Spirit. It's not by some person laying hands on you.
Right.
And it's all about giving him all the honor and all the glory, because you can't do anything.
Yes. And I'm so excited to see the signs and miracles and wonders that are going to happen.
Oh, I can't. Oh, Jenny, I want to be part of this.
Yes, ma'am. That are going to happen with these guys. And not just guys. We may get women too, but 90% of J6ers are men.
Yeah.
And some of the people that have stepped up in the community, I have to tell you some of those miracle stories. So we had 2 dear neighbors that live about 20 minutes away from us, but I consider them all neighbors, that called about a week ago and said, "Hey, we want to come over and talk to you and Doug, my husband. Mm-hmm. And are you available?" And there was just something about the tone in their voice. And I'm like, "Yep, yes, we are. You just come by anytime." And so they came by and they're like, "We believe in what you're doing. And we either want to pay for the first tiny house or we want to pay for all the infrastructure, because we know that you need infrastructure for it." And they paid for the water well and the septic system.
Wow.
Which is huge.
That is huge. That is huge because I've been in real estate for 19 years and I know how expensive these things are in the land
Yes.
and to be able to get it up and running. Wow. Wow.
Mhm. And then I went over to their house yesterday because they had a bunch of old cabinets from when they'd remodeled and, doors and all kinds of things like that. And they wanted me to look at it and see if we could use any of it. Well, of course we can,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then the wife had collected some different items to put inside, like rugs and sheets and pillows and all kinds of lamps, different things like that, that we could
Mhm.
use. And so I load up all of that stuff and tell them, I'll figure out when the contractors can come by and load up all of these cabinets and doors and everything. And then I'm on my way back home and she texts me and says that her husband wants to buy mattresses for all the tiny homes. And can I send them what size mattress people need? And I'm like,
Wow.
these people just give and give and give. It's amazing. And yesterday morning at church, the preacher was talking about the covenant that God has with us. And one of the things that he talked about was that he will bless those that bless you. And that's who these people are, right?
Mhm.
And all the people that have been involved in this project. I mean, we've only had our website launched since early December, so maybe 5 weeks. And we have raised almost $50,000 in small donations.
That's incredible.
Yes. The smallest donation was $5, and we've had 4 different people give $5 to our Give Send Go account. And those are my 4 favorite people. I love the big donations too, right? We can do
Mhm.
more with that. But those 4 people that gave $5 a piece, I feel like they actually gave everything that they could,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so we've been able to raise enough money in order to get the building supplies and all of that kind of stuff, all the other things, you know how it is, right, that go into
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
Going. And then we've had the contractors donate their time, and we've got the local Ace Hardware here is owned by Patriots, and they're letting us get all building supplies that we need for free. We just have a charge account with them that they're going to write off. And then one of my favorite ones is I was contacted by this electrical company out of Katy, Texas, which is about 3 to 4 hours away from us.
Mhm.
And they want to donate all electrical services, all electrical work, and all the supplies, the labor, everything for these 5 tiny homes, which is tens of thousands of dollars,
It
right?
is. It is.
And the reason why is because the owner of this company, it's called Patriot Services Electrical in Katy, Texas. The owner's name is Adam Jackson, and he's a married man, father of 5, and runs this pretty big electrical company. And Adam is a January 6th defendant.
Mm.
And during the week, he's on house arrest, and every weekend he has to turn himself into prison to serve out his sentence.
Every night.
Every weekend, he has to
Every
turn himself
weekend.
into prison, but he's on house arrest the rest of the time. And he has suffered through some of the worst of January 6th, prosecution and persecution, and is willing to pay his guys to travel out here and do this work for us because he believes in helping other J6ers.
Wow.
And that one just gets me because, I mean, that's miracles after miracles after miracles.
It is. It is. And I'm just blessed to be able to have this platform.
Yes. Thank you. Because it's people
Yeah.
like you, little podcasters and medium podcasters and big podcasters. It's everybody that's willing to
Yeah.
share the information. One of the preachers that I follow, Pastor Troy Brewer from the Open Door Church in Burleson, he's had me on his podcast before, and he calls it being a media missionary. If you're willing to share the information, whoever's watching this, if you're willing to send the link to all of your friends to watch it too, then
Yes.
it counts as being a media missionary. And I
No,
love
it
that
is.
term.
And then they're like, well, what can I do? Just share it. Just
Yes.
share it.
Share the information. Yes.
Because you don't know who somebody needs to be able to listen to this podcast and hear.
That's
And we're not begging for money. We're just putting it out there that this is a mission that's going on. It's an incredible mission. And God's hand is in this.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not so much, okay, you're just letting them come in and regroup and be able to function out on their own after this. No, you're giving these people hope, and giving back their dignity.
Yes.
And their purpose.
And so many of them, there's 1,600 J6 defendants. And of that, there's 186 that are military veterans. And veterans are especially near and dear to my heart. My dad and my uncle were in Vietnam. My grandparents were both in World War II. And so these guys that honorably served their country, some of them over 20 years, that have been incarcerated pre-trial for 4 years, and their country has completely turned on them.
Yeah.
That is complex PTSD. They have PTSD from going to war. They have PTSD from their country turning on them and demonizing them as a result of January 6th because they showed up to protest that day. Or some of them didn't even show up to protest. They showed up because they thought it was going to be President Trump's last speech, and then they never went home again. And so these guys with complex PTSD, like, thankfully, there's so many veterans organizations that are willing to support them, that are willing to help them, like, start their own businesses. I mean, we have so many different groups that are very close to where we live that are just waiting for the day that we get a J6er who's a veteran that shows up. And honestly, I think that day's going to be next week.
Yeah. Yay. Oh, my goodness.
So about the presidential pardons, and this one always gets me emotional too. So we are expecting that President Trump is going to, on January 20th, which he has said multiple times, give all 1,600 January 6ers a pardon of innocence. So a pardon of forgiveness is what usually happens. And a pardon of forgiveness means that you were guilty, but we forgive you. A pardon of innocence has only ever been used once, and it was when President Trump gave it to General Flynn. And so we are expecting pardon of innocence, exoneration, and commutation of sentences. And it's biblical. We expect that the prison doors will fly open and our people are going to walk out.
I know, that can get me. Because, firsthand, I mean, we could have been in that longer position, I mean, thank God he protected you. Thank God he protected me, and he protected so many other people.
Yes.
From having to go through this. But it's only God had to have his hand on the people that were in there, that are in there now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I did hear stories from you a couple years ago that the men that are in there are really using and talking about the gospel and talking about Jesus.
It's been amazing. To my knowledge, all 1,600 J6ers are Christians in various, depths or experience or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're all patriots. They all love our country. And in reading the letters that they write from prison, I'm amazed at how they have not lost their faith in God, and they have not lost their faith in our country as it was founded, right? Not what it is we've become due to the government, but as we were founded. And it just blows me away. I mean, there have been so many people saved in prison that have done baptisms in prison, which, of course, isn't a complete submersion, but, using toilet water or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it all works for God,
It
is all
does.
I know.
Water's water.
Water's water. Uh-huh. And so I'm excited to see what's next with that, because, I mean, some of these guys have been persecuted like Job, have lost everything, have lost their business, their home. They received a Dear John letter while they were incarcerated. Their wife divorced them, took their kids, and literally have nobody and nowhere to go. And God restores all things.
He does.
That's it. And
Never
all we have
finds gold.
to do is put one foot in front of the other and keep doing the next right thing and have faith. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy. It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
It's not. It's not. And it's humbling. It's surrendering everything to him. Because
Yes.
the world is going to fail you.
Oh, yes.
And it did. It failed. It failed them.
Mm-hmm.
The government failed them.
Oh, yes.
And it was done by our own government.
But too, one of the great things that's come out of January 6th is that, you take 1,600 people across the country and however many people they know, right? They know at least 100 people probably in their lifetimes, or 1,000 people. And so now you have all of these. For the most part, we are just a cross section of the country, middle-class Americans, all different backgrounds, activism, mental health, education, like just a cross section of the country, right? And the vast majority of us never cared about criminal justice reform until it happened to us.
Yeah.
And there have been people, some on the other side, some not on the other side, that have been screaming about criminal justice reform since at least the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that there's always been unjustly incarcerated people. There's always been innocent people put behind bars.
Always.
And I believe that we have a duty and a responsibility as people on the outside, as free Americans, and as Christians especially, to help the prisoners. I'm amazed at how, if you just go to look up Bible search, Bible verses on prisoners, how many there are and how many ways it is that we are supposed to help them.
Yep.
And so I'm tickled pink that I get to be part of this. I am so thrilled. I never in a million years, if January 6th hadn't happened, would I be building housing for people coming out of prison, right? But God has a purpose in everything.
He
God
does.
has a purpose in everything. And I'm glad that he gave me this mission, that this is part of my calling and what it is that I'm supposed to do to help a total of 1,600 people. It's not a ton of people, but it's 1,600 people.
It's 1,600 people that will help other people too.
Yes, absolutely. Just like how our contractors are helping us, and in turn helping these guys that are coming to us because they too had been incarcerated and somebody gave them a chance.
Yeah.
And they're paying it forward. And I think that's so important because we can't ever pay back what's been given to us by whomever gave it to us, throughout our lifetimes. But we can always pay it forward and help the next person.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
And it does. It would help these men and women about forgiveness and about healing and restoration with their family.
Oh, yes.
Because he does. He restores everything.
And next time I come on your show, I want to talk about forgiveness and all of the miracles that are happening out here.
I want to hear it. Want to hear it.
But real quick, I do want to say, like, the different ways that people can get involved if they want to. Of course, prayer is the most important thing and conveniently the most powerful thing.
It is.
Right? So please, please, intercessory prayer, whatever type of prayer it is that you do, please keep these J6ers, their family members, their children who have suffered immensely over the last 4 years. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and also our ministry, J6 Road Home, that we will continue to do what it is that, God's putting in front of us. I mean, it's just amazing how fast things are happening right now.
Mhm.
And then there's a million ways to get involved. If you've got 2 pennies burning a hole in your pocket that you want to get rid of, I'd love for you to send them to us.
Mhm.
You can find our Give, Send, Go is linked up on our website, j6roadhome.com. We've also partnered with our church here in Fredericksburg, the Bridge Church, which is
Okay.
accepting tax-deductible donations on our behalf. And so we have a lot of people that are going through them to get the tax deduction. And then I've got different tabs on the website of ways to get involved. One of the creative ways that 2 different people have come up with so far, which I'm just blown away, we've had 2 different vehicles donated to us. Different life situations. They've got a car that works just fine, is completely paid off. They don't need it anymore. And they heard about our ministry and have donated these 2 vehicles to us. So now we have something for these guys to drive. And then also had a lady that heard me on a podcast and asked if she emailed me through the website and asked if she could order me 2 sets of sheets from Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. She's like, I
Yeah.
just love his products and he's a great patriot. Can I send you 2 sets of sheets? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. What size mattresses did you get for the homes?
They'll be queen size mattresses. And I'm going to contact Mike as well and ask him to also send us all of the towels and the bedding and all of that kind of stuff
Oh.
as well. And hopefully I can get that message to him.
Yeah.
But if you have a job anywhere in the country, honestly, because we've got J6ers all over, like they're not all coming to my place, of course.
Mhm.
If you have a job, you're willing to hire J6ers, then there's a tab on my website for that. If you have an RV that you're willing to donate, then that's fantastic because they can live in that RV while they're on our property. And then if they move somewhere else, they can take it with them,
Yeah. Mhm.
If you're a professional that's willing to donate your time and services, whether it's counseling or business professional services, tax advising, credit repair, any of that kind of stuff, we need everybody. We need everybody in this. So there's plenty of ways to get involved, and we certainly appreciate everybody sending this information out
Yeah.
to all of the other conservative Christians that so that the more people that are involved, the more lives we can touch, and the more people that we can help build a new life as well.
And Jenny, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be part of the church. It's just not a building.
Yes, ma'am.
We're supposed to love thy neighbor. And, and what better way to serve is for the J6ers because they really, really need our help.
Yes.
And they need healing too. And it was something that they wouldn't wish on anybody. But wait till the testimonies when they come out. It's going to be absolutely incredible.
It is.
Of
Yes.
how God got them through it.
Because that's the only power that can get you through prosecution and persecution by not just the federal government, but also your local community, national and international media.
Yeah.
That's
what they did. The media just made it, out to be that we were these criminals.
Yes.
But a rude awakening's coming.
I sure hope so. This next week is going to
be and next week is going to be incredible. I want you to come back on as soon as we hear what's going on. And I just feel like without a shot of a doubt that he's going to release them.
Absolutely.
And they're coming home.
Yes, ma'am. And I can't wait.
We're just counting the days.
Mm-hmm.
And Jenny, that we're here for you with anything that you need. And I live here in Tennessee. So if there's anybody out there in Tennessee that really needs, to get some help, contact me.
Yes, ma'am. You're the second person today from Tennessee that has asked who they can help in that state.
Really?
So I'm looking into who is currently, I know Memphis, there's a federal prison in Memphis that has some of our people. I'm not entirely sure who all's there.
Okay.
And then there's also a federal halfway house in Nashville that
Really?
has some of our people. So I'm finding out
I
who.
had no idea. Let me know, because I'm only like 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from Nashville.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
And
I'll let you know. Maybe you can at least cook them a steak dinner or something.
no, I would love that. I would love that.
Awesome.
And be able to be for them here too. And then I know that I'm going to be making some road trips to Texas.
Oh, yes. Come see me.
Yes, I will love it. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much. Do you mind ending this out in prayer?
Absolutely.
Okay. All righty.
Are you praying or me praying?
Do you want to pray?
Sure.
Or do you want me to pray? Okay.
I'll pray.
Okay. All right, Jenny.
Dear God, thank you for today, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be with my friend Jamie. Thank you for putting her in my life 2 or 3 years ago when you did. God, thank you for all the people that are going to be listening to this podcast and praying for us and getting involved in this movement and in supporting the prisoners and helping you restore all things in their lives. God, thank you for the people that have donated their time and their money and their efforts and have shared our ministry with so many other people. Thank you for blessing all of the guys that are going to come here and live with us, that we're going to be able to serve and be able to minister to. And thank you for preparing their hearts and their minds and their eyes and their ears. And God, we are so excited about that. And we trust that you will bring us all of the people that are supposed to be here. Thank you for putting a hedge of protection around our property and the other businesses and individuals and everybody that are involved in this project, that you will protect them from any evil outside forces or people that would wish to destroy them, powers and principalities.
Mm-hmm.
God, thank you for providing all things in your timing, even though I usually wish it were faster. And thank you for blessing us. Thank you for calling the people that you called to DC on January 6th. Thank you for selecting us for a time such as this, right? Just like the name of this podcast, right? Here I am, Lord, send me. Thank you for picking us to get to build the kingdom here on earth. Please bless my friend Jamie and her husband and all the people it is that they reach through this podcast and get to minister to. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Oh, thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much. And then if you don't mind holding on, I'll put you backstage. I'll talk to you for a couple more minutes, but I'll do my outro and I'll see you in a minute.
Thanks for having me on, Jamie.
Thank you. Love you so much, my friend.
Love you.
Oh, what a powerful testimony. And if you're able to give, please, this is such an amazing ministry. And it's j6rehome.com. It's j6rehome.com. Any amount of donations would be going to such an amazing cause. And you know that it's going to go straight to the hands of the builders. And everything is set up for them and to be able to have their life started again and watching the healing and the miracles that is going to happen to these men and women. And we just thank you. We thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen to this podcast, share it with so many people. I'm asking you, please be able to share it and bring awareness of what's going on. And we just thank you and love you. And I hope you guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching the Here I Am Show. For prayer requests, questions, or show information, email me at hereiamshow@gmail.com.